Hello there folks, I'm Dan Brown from sortofinteresting.com and today you're joining me in the Banana Box studio and we're going to talk about boat life versus land life, the drama, the ultimate showdown, war, and why do I say these things so early in the video too? Right, basically I want to talk about my life on narrowboat Hilly compared to my life living here where I do now on dry land, compared to my life potentially on a theoretical boat if I move back onto using a 45-foot boat as an example. So you can look at the costs and the difference between the big boat compared to Tilly, the big boat compared to here, Tilly compared to dry land, and really just share a few of my thoughts and lessons learned and experiences over the last few years between boat life and land life. Before we get into that, I just want to give you the quick 1-minute boat hunt update. So ultimately, this video is going live 2.5 days late on a Tuesday evening rather than a Sunday morning. I did actually have a video uploaded, or started to upload for Sunday, but decided to cancel it. And basically, I was hoping that by the time I was recording this proper video to show you all, I would have some boat news for you. But once again, I've totally failed and it hasn't materialised. So that was 2.5 days wasted. Sorry about that, folks. So you can probably gather that I'm not particularly pleased with that situation. The boat hunt's still a total washout. I missed out on the initial boat that I was going to make an offer on because when I went to the marina it was already sold. Then I made an offer on another boat but decided against it on the counter offer. That boat could still interest me. I probably should have offered a lower initial price, but again, you live and learn and we've just got to move on. So it's annoying more than anything else. In my previous videos about the boat hunt, I've been quite down and getting quite, I don't know, not sad, but well, yeah, sad really. Annoyed and sad because I feel like it's putting my life on hold. Like, the whole plan is get the boat, live on it for a couple of months and settle in so I can figure out if there's any unexpected costs. Sorry, I'm looking very ghostly there. Let's see how that suits us. But basically, I feel like my life is being held up entirely at the minute by waiting for the boat, because I want to get the boat, live on it for a couple of months to see any unknown or unexpected costs or problems, so I can deal with that. And once I'm happy that I've spent the money that needs spending on the boat in the immediate vicinity and aftermath of buying the boat, once the boat's set up and how I want it and the major money has been spent for the time being, then I'll learn to drive and get a car and things like that and figure out where I'm going to have a permanent mooring. So until I get the boat, I want to keep every penny that I can in the bank to spend on the boat initially and then deal with everything as time goes on. And so, like I say, it's just annoying rather than anything else. It's like, I just want to get on, do stuff, but I don't want to learn to drive or get a car before getting the boat because I want that money in the bank in case it needs to be spent on the boat in the first place. So anyway, yeah, let's get on with the proper video now. So for anybody out there who is somehow unaware, because I never really made a big deal of it or mentioned it, but I used to live on an old boat called Narrowboat Tilly, a little joke in there for you somewhere, and it was fantastic. A very simple, very old, very basic boat, 30 foot long, only 15 foot of that was actual indoor space, so a very rough and ready, simple, basic lifestyle, but it absolutely suited me back then in my mid-20s at the absolute peak of my physical fitness, where I was literally using a pedal bike as my main means of transport. Then I'd sometimes be travelling 20 miles plus to go to my friends' houses, or well over 20-mile round commutes to go to work for 8 hours and back and so on. And it was a great lifestyle. I really enjoyed it, and it was very, very cheap, which we'll talk about in a second. Ultimately, I realised I couldn't live on a small boat I couldn't live on such a simple small boat indefinitely as I got older and less fit and less able to. I mean, even now, it's like I've got a bad knee from me walk up a mountain. You might have seen my recent video, and it's that sort of stuff that I really started to feel myself slowing down and could actually see from my cycling and walking records how much slower I was becoming, even over the few years that I had Narrowboat Tilly in the different routes that I'd walk or cycle. So I decided in the end to get out of it because I didn't feel committed enough to want to spend the money doing Tilly up and still end up just having a 30-foot boat at the end of it. And I certainly didn't feel at the time that I wanted to spend a fortune, or a small fortune at least, on a bigger boat and doing it all over and what have you. So ultimately, I decided to move back to dry land and ended up living here. Now, when I say the term one-bedroom flat, there's a certain image that some people have spring to mind. But if I say that this place has cost me in rent per month, this is actually more expensive than some of the two-bedroom semi-detached houses around in this region, around the Oswestry area. So this is a very nice, beautiful place. It's an apartment, not a flat, an apartment, of course. Don't use the F word. But basically, it's like lovely. Got my balcony overlooking Oswestry and see the distant landmarks, and you can pick out where the canal runs from them and stuff. Lovely stuff. Beautiful top floor of a beautiful old building. Can't fault it. Absolutely love it. And the real first initial difference, and the thing that really struck me, is that I always used to think I was carefree living on narrowboat Tilly. Really cheap lifestyle. I was spending all my time running around the woods and the fields and that. Wonderful. Almost like a dream come true sort of lifestyle for someone in their mid-20s, or certainly for me in my mid-20s. It's like some sort of semi-retirement almost. And I used to think I was so carefree, and that the boat didn't weigh on my mind, and I didn't worry about it when I was away, and Tilly was just tied up at the side of the canal and what have you. Whereas, as soon as I'd sold narrowboat Tilly and moved back to dry land, suddenly I felt so light and so free, and I realised how much it had played on my mind, and how much the sort of the constant, the base level of, oh, there's always something to be a little bit concerned about. Oh, how's the bilge? Is it filling up with rainwater while I'm at work? Or, oh, is that pump going to work? Oh, what's going on with this? And as soon as I started renting somewhere, even though the costs absolutely skyrocketed compared to my boat, I felt as if, well, this is all fine. It's like the roof blows off. Oh, I haven't got to worry about it. Like the light switch broke a while ago, and it was something simple, just something simple like that. And I've called in the office, the estate agent's like, oh, lights broke, and then as if by magic, somebody turned up and fixed it. And again, it's just like I say, that I feel as if, even though financially it's obviously far more expensive, and that's its own concern in another way, it's actually it's totally carefree. Never felt so carefree in my life, and it's something that I think a lot of people are a bit disappointed by my thoughts on that. But it is basically, what responsibility do I really have at this point compared to when I had a boat that was tied up, rusting away at the side of the canal and so on. If you word it like that, it sounds quite dire, but it wasn't quite like that. So basically, that's one of the things that I'm quite interested to look at when I go back to boat life, and looking at having a proper permanent mooring in a marina and stuff, so there's somewhere safe for me to take the boat and get out of the way when the busy summer months are going wild and there's traffic everywhere, and then get out somewhere nice and sensible and out of the way of the muddy towpaths and hard cycling commutes. Nice and dry, sensible marina when I'm in the middle of the winter months. That was a terrible sentence, I can only apologise. I was trying to say somewhere nice and safe to go during the winter months where I don't have to battle with the muddy towpaths and country lanes and what have you. That's better. So it's all about that thing of, if my boat's in a marina, then there's a fewer worries and a lot more security there, being amongst other boats and boaters and having security cameras and stuff like that. Whereas obviously it's still, like, if I spend 35 grand on a boat, I've got to worry about that 35 grand boat. Whereas here, I've got the money in the bank for any emergencies, and I don't have any major assets whatsoever. It's like the most valuable thing I own is a gold bar, I would say, and it's not even a big gold bar. So ultimately, that's one of the first things that I realised, that it's just somehow, it's easier, I suppose, is the other part of that carefree, relaxed thing. Whereas on narrowboat Tilly, because I didn't have a car and I still don't have a car, I would be doing these massive cycling commutes, which made life a lot more difficult to do an 8-hour shift between two like 10-mile plus bike rides at some points. Whereas now it's like, oh, I walk down 10 minutes to get to where I work and that's all good. And that also means that when I do go out on my bike, which I barely touch my bike these days, I'm all about sticking in my boots, to be honest. When I do go walking and go outside, it's always 100% just for fun and for pleasure and because I want to. Whereas on the boat, even though I did more cycling and more walking and more miles, it was because I had to. So it's, even though it was a great way to start and end your day in the summer months and be like, oh yeah, look at this, oh, riding to work and the sun's coming up through the mist. There's literally magical moments in the past, but I had to do it. And when you were in the middle of winter, covered in mud and your waterproofs were getting so so filled with water that your clothes underneath, the layers underneath, were wet through after your 10-mile bike ride or your 15-mile bike ride or whatever it was, it wasn't as good and it wasn't as magical and it wasn't as fun. So even though I might do less outdoor stuff now, it's not as if I don't go out every day pretty much and at least do some little walk here or a little walk there. The actual time I spend out doing stuff is 100% because I want to be doing it rather than because I've got to do it. So that's something to consider, at least this is just me talking about my experiences. Now, the cost is the big area that I think a lot of people will be interested in. So when I was on narrowboat Tilly, as I say, small, simple, basic boat, and because of that, 30-foot boats, things like mooring fees that are done on a per-foot basis are literally going to be half the cost of a 60-foot boat if you're on a 30-foot boat. So I would say on average, narrowboat Tilly per year cost me between £1,000 and £1,500 to run, as opposed to where I live now, where I would say my rent, electric, council tax and water, just the main four there, before you add in things like internet and food, for example, those things on their own come to about £7,000 a year, give or take, obviously. That's a rough figure. So you can see how some years narrowboat Tilly cost me 1/7 to live on than 1 year living here. So you can see, obviously, if I'd have stayed on board narrowboat Tilly for an extra year, I could have maybe put another £6,000 in the bank. So there's a lot to be said about, like I say, having that very simple, basic lifestyle and the ability it gave me to save up money. But equally, it's an important thing to note that I've always lived in a very sort of stingy way. I've never had any debt whatsoever of any description, never borrowed money from family or anything of that nature at all. And it's always been one of my fundamental things. I've said it before, I could have bought a bigger boat than Tilly sooner than I bought Tilly, but instead I wanted to save up my money and pay for it outright. And then once I bought Tilly, that was it. I didn't have to worry about repayments or anything. I just had Tilly, she was mine, and then if I sold her, that money went straight into my bank. It wasn't really, oh, I've got this money now, but I still owe £5,000 repayments over the next few years. And that's how I like to be. That's how I've always been. And it makes life difficult. It makes life harder because I have to go without some things that other people take for granted. But what I gain from it, I feel, is more, for me personally, I'm more than happy. I'll leave a link in the description to my epic money video where I talk about the Dan Brown money theory. But yeah, moving swiftly on. So, as I say, Tilly, £1,000 a year, that would cover literally cover insurance, boat licence, which would be about 560, 580, something like that. I'm not sure how much it rose, obviously, over time. I'm not sure what it is now. Boat licence, insurance, and even winter mooring for 5 months under one set of rules at some point, as the winter mooring rules on the canals have changed a couple of times over recent years. I think I paid about £225 to moor up for 5 months on the side of the canal around the church sort of area. So obviously things like that, your moorings for months on end, again, small basic boats, keeping the costs low, very, very cheap, basically. I don't know really what else I can say, but definitely not an easy life, not a life that a lot of people would be happy with. fast forward to here, my costs obviously absolutely shoot up through the roof, but it's really comfortable. It's a lovely place that I live, and as I say, it's probably a good 150 quid more a month than I could have spent renting somewhere similar sort of layout, similar sort of basic idea back when I moved off Narrowboat Tilly. In fact, there's somewhere actually over £150 cheaper to rent that's a 1-bedroom flat / apartment currently available in town as it happens. So again, I've spent more here as a special treat to myself almost, as a pat on the back for my rough and ready lifestyle for 4 years on Tilly, I suppose. But ultimately, I look around here and it's always been an empty place. I don't have much furniture. I've literally had everything in one room basically at one point, where I had a big banana box studio with air beds as separate walls. I had my little living room sort of TV area, and I had my bed all in this one room with the balcony and that. And then the actual bedroom I used just as a room to build a model railway layout, believe it or not. So again, I'm not really talking as a normal person in a lot of these instances. So the costs, like I say, a lot more obviously on land life. But if I go back to boat life now with a 45-foot boat, which is what I'm still saying that's the sweet spot for me personally, because you cut in the little bit of cost per year from boat licence and mooring fees by it not being like a 50-something foot boat, but also it's a lot more space than what I had on Narrowboat Tilly in many cases on these 45-footers. So because of that, obviously, moorings for a 45-foot boat, if it's on a per foot basis, are going to cost something along the lines of 150% of what a 30-foot boat's mooring costs would be. And this time, if I go back to the canals and get another boat, my intention is a 45-foot boat, maybe a little bit bigger, who knows, but to have a proper permanent marina mooring. Now, there's 2 main marinas in this area, and judging by what's on their websites at the moment, at least, I would say it would be roughly £1,500 to live at one for a full year, and about £2,500 to live at another for a full year. So again, don't know how negotiable those would be. I mean, I certainly know that Chirk came to less money than I was expecting based on what their own actual rules stated when I moored up at Chirk for a short while. But ultimately, the marina cost there, you can see, if I've got a full year-long, year-round marina mooring, that alone is going to cost me at least as much as all of my boat costs for Narrowboat Tilly cost back in the old days. Oh, just to clarify, if anyone's wondering why it might cost me £2,500 for a 45-foot boat in a marina, and I just said it cost me about £225 for 5 months on a small boat previously mooring, that's because that was just an on the side of the canal temporary mooring basically. So you didn't have any facilities, and it was just for the winter months for 5 months of the year rather than 12 months. And without obviously a proper marina backing you up with places to dispose of your rubbish and all the rest of it. So the marina alone could cost me £1,000 a year more than I spent living on Narrowboat Tilly for a year in the past. Then, of course, on a bigger boat, you would have the boat licence. So whereas Tilly used to cost me something like 500 and something a year to licence, a 45-foot boat at the moment would cost me just under 800 quid for a yearly boat licence if I paid it up front and got the 10% discount or whatever it is these days. And if I didn't get that discount, it'd be pushing towards 900, like 800 and something pound a year. So you can see there, instantly, £2,500 on a marina mooring. We're basing this on the worst case scenario just for the sake of making this simple argument. And insurance would probably cost me about 120, 130 for a 45-foot boat, depending. So if you round that and the boat licence up to 1,000 and stick that on top of the 2,500 marina mooring, you can see before you put in things like diesel, gas, wood and coal for heating, you're already at £3,500 a year, living back on the canals on a bigger, more proper boat with a proper marina mooring. Now, I would want to spend sort of probably half my time in the marina and half my time travelling around, I would say. so that I could dive back into the marina when the really busy, crazy summer months got back up on the Llangollen Canal, and then over the winter months when it gets all muddy and the towpath turns to mush and all the country lanes are all falling apart and all that sort of stuff. Obviously, it'd be nice to be able to just go to a nice marina with proper road access and be like, this is a change. This is a nice, easy winter in comparison. And of course, being in the marina, you've got all of the benefits of the security and being surrounded by people who actually know about boats, rather than myself who just looks at boats and goes, oh, I like the lifestyle, that's what it's all about for me, but I've no idea what this and this does, so I'm going to need somebody to point at this and tell me, do I press that button there, or do I never ever look at it again? But you can see the general gist of it here, that even just looking at the boat life previously on Tilly compared to the potential boat life on a boat going forward, like the costs already doubled just based on that simple, very brief example. And then if I do get my car and my driving lessons and that, then obviously that's going to be another big cost to add in, which isn't directly related to boat life, which is why I've left it out of that thing. But even though it would be far more expensive to live on this next theoretical, hypothetical boat compared to Tilly, it's still going to be saving a lot of money per year and a lot cheaper per year compared to living on dry land where I live now. And I would say there's that certain threshold though where if you spend so much on a boat to a certain extent and then spend, say, $4,000 a year on expenses of marinas, boat maintenance and all that sort of stuff and licenses, if you spend a lot of money on your boat initially, then I do look at it and I do think, well, at some point there's got to be the argument to make of, would you be better off just buying a small, simple house and putting a massive deposit down on it, which you have used to buy that boat, and then find yourself with a very low monthly mortgage repayment, and potentially have very, very, very minimal living costs that would be comparable to living on the canals on that bigger boat that you spent what your deposit could have been going on. But of course, this is where it all comes down to the lifestyle fundamentally, where I just prefer, well, I just love the outdoors. That's the key to it, really. I think if I had an infinite budget and endless money and didn't have to worry about going to work and costs and things like that, then I could happily live on dry land and just go off running around in the great outdoors all the time. But you still just miss that sort of closeness to nature that, again, it sounds very sort of hippie-ish in many respects, but there's something about being on a boat, being literally the only real sign of humanity around, and waking up in the morning with like the ripples of the water reflecting in the sunlight onto the boat roof through the curtains, and opening the curtains and you're literally just looking into fields, looking out just over hills and looking, I don't know, maybe a few miles depending on where you've moored up to the low hills of Wales in the distance, and it's fantastic. And it's like literally some people have said that it's like my life on narrowboat Tilly was like just camping and what have you, which is, I mean, you can certainly make that argument, but there is that element to it. There's that closeness of, well, we're just going to take our boat off into the middle of nowhere and pitch our tent here. This is where we're going to be for the night, and then, oh, we might go down here. And it does, like, in many ways, remind me of all the trips I used to take to Scotland camping, and we'd drive thousands of miles over Scotland over a couple of weeks and just pitch tents anywhere, like right on the edge of lochs, right at the feet of mountains, and then we'd be up first thing and run up the hills and get them done before 9 a.m. and stuff like that. And there is a lot of that element to why I love boat life, really, that just being out there in the middle of nowhere, it's just, I love it. I absolutely love it. Yeah, right, this is a really long video. That, I didn't realise it was quite that long. Oh, I've got to go and cut out the bits where I coughed and had to have a drink and stuff as well. Oh, this is going to be a long edit. Right, thank you so much for tuning in, my friends. I'm not going to bore you with the usual book plugs or anything, apart from to say, wow, look at this book. by me, Daniel Mark Brown. Links in the description. It's a big paperback with shorter books collected inside it. You can buy the books individually for the Kindle, or this as a Kindle version, or as this lovely paperback. Anyway, have an absolutely fantastic day. If you're interested in seeing me on Twitter and Facebook posting outdoorsy pictures, check the links in the description. And well, until the next time, my friends, have a fantastic day. Keep it interesting, keep it boat worthy. And of course, my friends, farewell.